Wide out. Power. Wide out. Power. Shove. Pull and pull, pull and pull, pull and pull. A.
This athlete certainly has started quickly here, Paula.
Yeah, he's attacking well up the hill as well. You can see him gritting his teeth, trying to keep his sights and his eyes fixed on, not on the top of the hill, but just on the heels of the British runner ahead of him, James St. Murray there to... Yeah, he looks okay. I think he's comfortable. He's actually extended that gap slightly over the Portuguese team behind him. Belgium now moving through it and starting to challenge the Spanish team.
Yeah, McMurray's
It's the Power Hour show, and it's brought to us by courtesy of the Perfect Balance Clinic. And we'd like to welcome onto the show my dear colleagues and who have been on the show before and have kindly, agreed to come on and share some of their what's going on, with regarding training, over the lockdown period, and among other issues, also, make a contribution in way of a tribute to a colleague, a coaching colleague, that passed on courtesy, or rather, a week ago, was it? Yeah, a week ago, Lloyd Cowan, and share their own interactions with the man, the person, and the coach. Welcome to the show, Gary and Days. How are you doing, guys?
Good, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
All good, thanks, Dan. Yeah, thank you.
Good to have you guys. What's been happening? This is it's a more stringent lockdown. This one. What's been happening with you on a personal note?
Well, training has continued as normal. As normal as it can be for myself and Des. We've made some adaptations to obviously training facilities, but yeah, we're doing what we can when we can and trying to stick to our training program as much as we can. Obviously it has to be adapted slightly, but apart from that, yeah, all is well.
Yeah, just ticking over, and it's also good for mental health as well. It always is anyway, but difficult time.
Yeah, you just need to check your mic there, Days. It's coming up with a bit of a blip. Yeah, with a bit of a feedback and a bit of a blip as well. Well, gentlemen, I would like to start off with, the sad loss of Lloyd Cowan. A huge loss to the track and field community, and undoubtedly one of the, most visible and most accomplishable, coaches out there in track and field for Great Britain. Each one of you had interactions, with, Lloyd Cowan, at different times of his career and at different times of your own careers yourself. What was your experience, Gary?
Yeah, I first met Lloyd when I was around 16 years of age. That's when my coach first took me to Shaftesbury Barnet Harriers. Obviously, I'm based in Luton. I used to be a part of Luton. We used to train in Luton, but she decided to move clubs, and she took some of us athletes with her. So that's kind of when I first got to see Lloyd, and obviously having a fascination with hurdles. Lloyd was a very big person in regards to hurdles. He was one of the flamboyant guys in the club who you always knew Lloyd was about.
Yeah.
It's a bit of freeze there, Stan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think it's frozen there.
Yeah.
Are you back there?
Yeah, I'm here. The whole screen just went a bit blank. But
Okay.
So I kind of first met Lloyd around them times there, and being an avid hurdler myself, obviously I was around there at Luton when we're training, but then when I started going down to Shaftesbury and actually competing a bit later on when I was about 19 in the British League, Lloyd actually became my kind of teammate. He would always do the A string, I'd do the B string, and I wouldn't do the B string all the time because I'd fill in if Greg Dunson wasn't racing, because we had, as you know, Shaftesbury is a very big club. It's full of very talented and high quality athletes like Lloyd Cowan himself. So it was a privilege to actually train and sometimes with him and actually compete with him as a teammate. And then a little bit later on, when in my last interview with yourself, I think we talked about my return to the hurdles at about the age of 31. Lloyd actually became my coach, so he was my coach throughout them last few years before I retired. When I had my accident, but when I had my accident, I was under Lloyd's wing, and I was making really good progress with Lloyd as my coach. And one thing I always remember about Lloyd, he was always a good encourager. He always kind of encouraged me and saw a lot of ability in me, and get me out there working hard. And so it was unfortunate when it happened with my foot at the time, because it took a little bit of a setback. But yeah, Lloyd was instrumental in my second half of my athletic career, returning to the hurdles.
Des, you had interesting encounters with the man, the athlete, both as the athlete, especially as the athlete. What were your experiences with him?
Yeah, so I first met Lloyd as a rival, a thriving hurdler, and I was kind of on the scene before Lloyd when I was a youth hurdler, sort of late 70s, early 80s, and I was doing really well then. I was British champion, #1 ranked, and I'll always remember when I went to Crystal Palace. Training one Saturday morning with some guys, and there was this really lean, tall, intimidating, imposing guy that came up to me and said, "You Des Wilkinson? I know who you are." I said, "Oh, okay," and I'm just just a humble lad from Luton, just getting on with what I had to do. And he said, "Yeah, I know you." He said, "You're in charge at the minute, but I'm telling you now, I'm going to beat you." He was really kind of in your face, and it just said it as it is. And then he said, "You're from Luton, aren't you? You're a Luton boy." He says, "Yeah, that's the country. We're London boys. We're in charge here." So he was very smart, because I mean at the time I was only 16, and the mind games and the mental kind of insight wasn't, it's probably more natural than anything else. But in reflection, he was getting into my head. You know, he was planting the seeds early to say that as a junior he'd be coming for me. So that was my first experience with Lloyd.
Bless him.
Yeah, bless him indeed. He went on really to be recognized for all his coaching efforts. And I have a clip here where he comes a runner-up, you know, to Coach of the Year, not just in track and field, but across all sports. You know,
oh, it's been wonderful being here at these awards among so sort of esteemed coaches all over the international grassroots levels. I've had a thoroughly good time just being here, talking around the members of my table, because on my table we had 5 nominees on the table. We didn't get an award, but we struck out lucky. But you know what? The fun of just being here among these people is the greatest, one of the best weeks I've had in yonks, to tell you the truth. Yeah. When I found out I was nominated.
Yeah, Lloyd.
Yeah.
Bad loss.
Bless him. Yeah, there he was, you know, saying, I think he goes on, you know, within, you know, in that interview there, you know, saying for him, just being there, nominated amongst all, you know, the top brass of coaches across all sports in itself was an honor, not only an honor, but he was a winner by just being there. It didn't matter that he didn't win the overall title and the overall medal, but being there and coming runner-up was already, just being there in itself, beg your pardon, made him a winner in that light, that recognition to come out there. He also goes on to point out that, you know, for him, track and field is a business for winning, and he is in track and field for the purposes of winning. How do we identify with those sentiments in some of your interactions with him? You know, Lloyd Cowan, the winner.
Yeah, for me, I remember I was 33 when I retired from the sport after my accident, okay, with my foot. And I always remember Lloyd saying to me, "Gal, you're 35 in 2 years, man. You're going to mash it up in the Masters Athletics, you know." Because I was running around 8'2" at the time. And he said, "Listen, Star, when you go into the Masters, you're going to mash it up." So he had like this plan ahead of me. And my reaction was, I'm not running with them old people. You know what I mean? Because I had no insight to Masters Athletics. As far as I was concerned, I was just focused on being the best I could be as a senior. And it's only later on now down the line where I'm now involved in Masters Athletics. It's such a different thing. But he had high hopes for me pursuing certain competitions and certain goals and certain things within the Masters. So he weren't really focused on what I was doing as a senior, because my days of a senior was coming to an end. But Lloyd actually got me to the British Championship final, which was televised, and the announcer or the TV guy announced me as the old man of the group, because I was 33 and all the guys in the final were like 21, 22, 23. You know, it was a little joke that Lloyd and I had, you know what I mean? But he said, "Don't worry about that, because, you know, 2 years from now, you'll be mashing it up." But that time didn't come, because I retired from the sport at the end of that year.
Yeah. Anyway, bless him, bless him. I know Des, you and other coaches were on the, you know, the initial tribute show that we did a couple of weeks ago, and all the coaches indeed, you know, made mention of their various experiences, and all of them, each one to a man, you know, would highlight both the person, the athlete, and the coach, and the great contribution that he did to British track and field. I'll tell you, when we come back, you know, I'd like us now to focus on the GB Masters, what this stringent lockdown has done to you guys, as it has done to many other athletes. And everyone is come up with different strategies, training strategies. But I caught up with, you know, one publication, or rather broadcasting publication, where you guys were featured in, and I thought I'd bring you back and so you can share it with our community on this show, you know, on what's going on with your car park training and all that. That's the story. When we come back, that's the focus.
Okay.
Gary, I would like you to check. Gary, may you just check your thing? I'm getting a bit of echo from your contributions there, if you may.
Is it my voice?
We represent Great Britain Masters, and we're both medalists at European and world level.
Right, let's have a look at that, gentlemen, and then you can introduce it to me and tell us what was going on. Obviously, we have this clip here, courtesy of the BBC, 3 counties, as it were, that made the program. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about that program as well, or that, you know, that show as well.
We represent Great Britain Masters, and we're both medalists at European and world level.
Right, that was the audio recording over the clip there. Would you like to pick that one, Days? What was happening?
Yeah, sure. So I'll kind of take it back slightly. So Gary and I, since probably November time, have been training in a car park which is adjacent to an AstroTurf in Dunstable. So this AstroTurf, Gary's been using it a lot longer than I have, but over the last 10 months through this pandemic period, we've been using that facility on a regular basis because of the track being closed and other facilities. So it's been instrumental to keeping us going in training. AstroTurf with our wickets to use for hurdles, and we also were able to utilize some kind of blocks as well, either DIY in my case or authentic blocks. So, but also it's been a space which has been used by all of the community, not just sports people, but people who just want to do general exercise, walking, people take their dogs in there, young families with their children. So it became a real focal point for the community, just to get out to keep going during that period. Yeah. So in November, we found out that there was planning permission for building, but there's no date as of yet where the building will take place. So the Bedfordshire Council, or the council in the area, shut the facility, boarded up the gates. So it's kind of it's a no-go area for everybody. So Gary and I then decided to continue using that area and that space to train in the car park. And then a lady there's a skate park adjacent to that. One of the mothers of children using that skateboard park came up to us and she was astonished that we were hurdling in a car park and doing all the training that we do, and said that she thought it was a disgrace. We told her what we do, and she said, would you mind me that you guys, if I got in touch with the local radio station, that you would kind of help us to get some backing to get it reopened. So that's the kind of backdrop to it, and we of course said yes, because help with our profile, then great.
Okay, wow. So Gary, what ensued from that? From that that visibility and the voice that you gave with your training that you gave to the community outcry for the closure of this facility. What became of it, or what has come out of it from that?
Well, at the moment, nothing that I'm aware of. The understanding was from the lady that approached us that it'd be nice for the facility to still be open, so that the people, the community, can still enjoy it until building works commence. And at the moment, it's like they said, it's just locked up, it's boarded up, it's dormant, it's not being used. And there was more positivity coming out of it being open than not being open. And like Des said, I've used that facility now since I returned to sport. I've used that for the last 3 years in preparation, because it's been kind to our bodies, our joints, our knees and such, so forth. And then any track session we need to do, we do, or maybe once, twice a week would be on the Astro. And so throughout the lockdown, me personally, I've been there for the last 3 years. So over the lockdown period, I've seen so many people coming out to just exercise and train and do so many positive things, because it seems like it's been a bit of an escape for some people from the pandemic and the lockdown and what's going on in the world right now. And for me, I think it's a shame that it feels like that side of it has been taken away from them. There's a gentleman, for example, that goes there. I had a chat with him one evening. He's often there with Des and I, and he just jogs around. He does about 20 laps, and then he goes about his business. He's not going at no fast pace. He's not looking to be an athlete. And when I got talking to him one evening, he's just recovered from cancer. And he'd put on loads of weight before. He's lost loads of weight. He feels really upbeat. He feels really positive. He's out there now as a regular every day doing 20 laps around the AstroTurf. And often I wonder how he's getting on, because mentally he was in a good place after having many challenges, personal challenges, and then the challenges that are now thrown upon every one of us. And we all deal with this pandemic in our own way. And being athletes, we're built. Our default setting is to overcome. Our default setting is to be positive, make the best out of any situation. But that's not the case for everybody. And so, more than us, we're adapting. We're using the car park. We're using that facility. Des and I are really not bothered where we train, because we know we can still make the best of the situation. If any facilities are open, then we'd choose to go and train on a track or whatever. But to see that place closed and the people that were going in there, I saw some PTs that were doing one-on-ones, then they started using the car park in the very first couple of weeks of it being shut down. Then all of a sudden, they're not in the car park no more. So have they become demotivated? You know, and like they said earlier on, I think it's not just about the physical, it's about the mental health. And a lot of people have used that place as an escape to get away from the everything that's going on and just go and exert a bit of energy. And we know that when you train or when you do any physical exercise, it makes you feel good, right? And you come away upbeat and you feel energetic. And I just think that side of it hasn't been positive. It's had more of a negative effect on the community than it has closing it, because it's not utilized, it's not vandalized. It's been open for 3 years, 4 years even, just open. And so we didn't quite get it, but because it's a political thing, we haven't got involved in it on that level. We were just approached in the car park because we're carrying on our training. And so I just think it's a little bit sad, that's all, as I mentioned in the video recording.
Yeah. Well, let's leave the politics aside, as you say, you know, athletes and hurdlers especially, your default is to hurdle over obstacles, you know.
That's so right.
The authorities put in one obstacle, before you. Right, you can't use this AstroTurf. What do you guys do? You shift it to a car park.
That's right.
A car park. Let's have a look at some of that. I need to understand this. I really need to understand this.
I'll tell you.
Right,
we come here to do our training. We use it as an adaptation. For the last probably 3 years, been using the AstroTurf during our 4 or 5 training session a week program. Unfortunately, it's closed, so we're just adapting to the surroundings. So we're tending to use the car park for sprint drills, sprint runs, and hurdle drills. We have to compromise our training by being on concrete. We're constantly in trainers. We're never in spikes. We're never in blocks.
Well, with the Astro, we're able to use blocks, and it's also a more of a kinder surface for us to train on, and so.
Right, the Astro is not there. You've put your voice, you've lent your voice to the community outcry, but there you are. Your training has got to go on. Tell me about the car park there and all these innovations that you're doing there. You guys, it's like, you're putting up a construction site or something. What's going on there?
I'll tell you what, Stan. One day, right, we was always, when we was inside the Astro, it's like a big enclosure, a big fence. But once that was locked off, Des and I was in the car park, and we decided to just use one little strip nearer the back of the bowling alley. And then one day we were just standing there, and it was as if our eyes were open to see things in a different light. And some people see the cup as half full or half empty, but on this particular day, I remember saying to Des, you know what, Des? This is like a concrete track. If you look, it goes down like that and round like that. We can actually still do our 120s, our 300 repetitions and stuff like that. And he was like, yeah. So he said, you know what? Let me get my measuring wheel. I'll measure it out. He measured it out all the way round, and it was about 350 meters. And so that became our track, and we began to see that completely different. And it's funny how just before we saw that, I said to Des, I said, you know what, when one door closes, another one opens, and all of a sudden we're training on that little strip, and then we began to see it as it just looked like a concrete track to us now. So we've done our 300 repetitions out there, we've done our 60-meter sprints out there, and now we do our hurdle work out there. We can't use blocks, but what we do, we put our foot against the curb as if it's the back block, and push off the curb as if it's a back shoe on the block. And so we're just adapting to our surroundings and utilising what we have, because we don't want to have no excuses. You know what I mean? It's easy to kick back, chuck your shoes off. Mentally, sometimes I have battles thinking, well, there's no competition, so why am I training at this level? But for me, I'm walking in faith, and I'm walking in hope that somewhere along the line, if it does open up, I'm ready. And rather than being 60% ready and having to close the gap of 40%, I'd rather be 90% ready and close the gap of 10%. So that's just kind of where I'm at. You know what I mean? And that's, like I said, how we began to see the car park, isn't it, Des?
Yeah, definitely. And another thing, Stan, what Gary and I noticed about training that area, there was a certain energy having to utilise a resource like that. It kind of took us back to the old school way of training. So, we've got a great facility at Lee Valley where, you're in the warm and you've got, access to all different types of equipment. But it almost took us back to the Rocky days, where you have to chop down a tree rather than do weights. And, so it's instilled into us even more fire and determination, because we know that we've gone back to basics, but we're grateful for that. And it's kind of raised as another level, if you like, in terms of what we're doing.
Bit of sawdust comes to mind.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it is said that obstacles only reveal someone's belief. Obstacles reveal the reality that the person is to themselves. Obstacles, as individuals define them or and endorse them, they are only a reflection of oneself.
Yes.
And so, given the obstacles of not having a proper facility, and I'm using the word proper very loosely here, and then you guys not having the access to the AstroTurf, there you are. You look at this facility, which is meant for cars in the modern perception, but you seem to have stripped it back down and stop seeing anything else that is in there except what you guys want to use it for.
Exactly.
You know, it's just such a blessing to be able to do that and see that. And when we was inside the Astro, there was no need for us to actually see that. But when things were locked off, you've either got to learn to be an overcomer or you're going to be overcome, and it's always it's going to be a choice. And you know, Des and I give thanks often, mate. We're out there. People come and talk to us still. Some people are really inspired, and some people are like touched by what we do. Even when we was in the Astro, you know, the people were so touched by what we do, and when we shared our journey or share what we're doing and why we're doing it. It is a community thing, and like they said, there's a really good energy around there. But I've seen a lot of people dwindling away. But like I said, there's no excuses or limitations. The only limits there are the ones we place on ourselves, and I'm determined not to place limits on myself. If I say to my kids all the time, there's no such word as can't. If I can or I won't. We might struggle with something, but that doesn't mean we can't do it. In time, if we practice, we can. And so we're built that way. You know yourself, Stan. You know, some athletes are not all built that way. Some have the physical attributes, but not the mental side of the game. And Des and I have been blessed, maybe because we're older, we grew up in a different generation where, you know, when I used to have to navigate my way to Stockwell Park as a 15-year-old, I'd have to walk down to Leagrave train station, get a train to Luton town station, walk up the hill to training, do my training, and make that long journey back home. If you ask some of the new generation children, would you do that? They're like, no way. So that's what's keeping us, I believe.
Yeah.
What we've been brought up on, you know, that steeliness, that never give up spirit, that always finding a way out, a new option. That's where we're kind of at.
Yeah, it's definitely a mindset thing, and maybe even as you refer to a generational mindset thing there, to look at obstacles differently. Without an overdose of health and safety and an overdose of safeguarding and all these, modern perspectives, which probably in themselves would, if you guys did not strip those down of yourselves, you wouldn't be able to be running in the car park, would you?
Exactly.
No. And it is tough, Stan. You know, let's not make no bones about it. It's very, very tough. And as Gary said in the video, you know, I had joints, making a bit of a hammering, and also we have got to have that awareness of health and safety. Cars come around to park there. But I'm kind of nursing a couple of at the moment that I have to manage, and you know, running on that surface isn't helping. But I've got faith, I've got hope, and I've got belief that this is part of the training ground for the greatest will follow because of this season, and it's training us to. We'll be able to encounter everything after this. There'll be nothing that because of this experience.
Yeah, it builds. I think it builds a resilience in you, and sometimes it's in those valley experiences when you realise what's within you, and that's where you grow. You don't grow sitting on the mountaintop, And it'd be nice to be at Lee Valley, because I was doing training sessions at Lee Valley on a Saturday morning with my coach, and some training sessions over at St Albans track when Luton was closed. But like I said to Des, those things now become a luxury to us. And I really enjoy training in the car park, funny enough, because I just feel, I don't know why, I just feel like it's just, I don't know if all my competitors are doing that or making them adaptations, but I know I am. If you go indoors in a stadium, it's going to be like, wow, it's going to be a luxury. Whereas when you're in it all the time, you don't always appreciate that. And also what it's shown Des and I is that You don't need them dressed up fancy facilities to be able to train and do some decent training. We both know there's a guy in Masters Athletics, he's retired now, but he never had access to indoor facilities or certain training facilities. He used to train on the hills and train in the park. And the guy holds world records and British records, and he was super fast. So I think it's just a change of mindset. For me, I'm learning a lot through this lockdown period about myself.
Yeah. Likewise.
There's a place, you know, it's good to hear that, because sometimes you know, our modern lifestyles could have placed different emphasis on certain training accessories. But you know, the beginning and the long shot of it is that it's the body that has to deal with the running. And if the body has not adapted, irregardless of the stimulus of adaptation, irregardless of the stimulus of adaptation, if the body has not adapted, it doesn't matter what stimuli you have been using, what facility you have been using or have not had access to. It's the adaptation that the body arrives at relative to the challenge that is put before it. That's what brings about competition readiness or lack of competition readiness. And it's interesting, you know, just to hear, you know, you two gentlemen take us back, you know, a few years to understand, to really appreciate that again, that there's more to training than just the fantastic facilities and the brilliant equipment. And in at the bottom line of it is, it's the body that has got to produce that performance.
Yes,
and,
right.
It does not favor what facility it has been worked on or what equipment has been worked on. It simply is, what adaptation has it benefited by interacting with that facility or that piece of equipment. So absolutely brilliant that. Let's look at some of the adaptation that you guys are trying to get out of a car park. Oh my goodness.
It's not very good for your joints, your knees, your ankles. And one thing we don't want to do is get hurt. So we're not here as much as we would be if we was on the track, or if the Astro is open, because it's a lot kinder. So it's not as fast as a track. The Astro has been very much an important part of my training. From March, from the lockdown started, many people were beginning to come to use the Astro for some kind of fitness, exercise, maybe walking dogs. Some people would be gently jogging around.
I think it should be open because we're currently locked down again. There's a lot of people.
Right. There are two things that, excuse me, there are two things that I pick out from there that, you know, stand out. One is the technical bit, you know, for the hurdling itself, you know, the measurements, the distance between the hurdles, the height of the hurdles, you know, that's some kind of demand there, you know, that, you know, you would think you would need the qualified experts, you know, that set up these measurements on tracks, you know, and design these hurdles. You know, you have different companies involved in that sort of different industries, organizations even. But there you are, the two of you making, you know, coming up with hurdles and the hurdle specifications. Good Lord.
Yeah, you know, God is good, you know, because Des has got a measuring wheel, so he'll measure out to the first hurdle, the distance, because we know the distances and in between. And then we've got wickets. Between us, we've got 24 wickets. So some of our sessions are like 3 runs over 12 hurdles. And so I can have 12 wickets, he can have 12 wickets. But I've kind of adapted some hurdles, made my own hurdles, and they're literally probably 10 centimeters lower than the race height. So it doesn't really matter whether I go over race height or not. It allows me, we don't tend to train over race height that often anyway. And so that doesn't really matter. But for me, what's more important is keep stimulating the rhythm. And because my hurdles are the bigger ones, I've only got 3 of them, but they're like 10 centimeters smaller, so race height, and so we can still mimic things. But like I said to you in one of our interviews before, Stan, my focus this winter was more about running and speed. And so we've been training I'm at the end of 16 weeks now of training, and only 4 weeks of that has been back on the hurdles. 12 weeks of that's just been running. So we haven't needed a lot of hurdles really until recently. So.
And just in addition to the brilliant hurdles that Gary made, another revelation we got from the car park. If you look at the lines that car parks have to park between, we discovered that the distance between each of those lines is pretty much it's just short of the race distance, isn't it, Gary?
Well, they're 8 feet, and so we tend to train over 24 feet in between the sticks. Our race, or 25 feet, something like that. The race distance is about 28. So we pull them in, we discount them a bit, but we can just use the lines, set them up on the lines now instead of measuring everything out. So it's as if
the lines are already there for us.
But it's only if you see it, you've got to see it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be able to look, outside that, proverbial box, to be able to see such possibilities and such predispositions that one can readily adapt and use, in the process. I also notice, you use, the gyms are out of, locked out, but you got some SNC going out there, on the car park. How's your SNC going like?
Yeah, for me, it's I've made a lot of adaptations. So I've introduced some plyometrics more plyometrics, I'd say, and I do a lot of single leg stuff, so because I can't squat, I do a lot of single leg stuff, like from a chair, which is probably about 2 foot high, and I'll use a kettlebell and a weighted jacket. I wear a 15-kilo weighted jacket, so I've adapted my strength training accordingly to that. So I kind of do that. I do some short sprints with the 15-kilo jacket on also. I do a bit of bounding with the jacket on, with the jacket off. So it's just adapting, Stan. You know what I mean? We can't get in the gym. I do a lot of resistance work with my bands. I've got very heavy duty bands. So I try to do some resistance work with that to keep up some of the strength work in my upper body, in my lower body, working on the rec fem area. And even with speed work that you'd normally do, because before the lockdown, I started to do a lot of speed work and power work together in the gym. So light weights and fast. So now I'm using a lighter band and doing speed stuff with the band. So it's just adaptation, so that, like I said, that transition back into normality, or what we think is normal. I actually said to Des, I don't even know if I need weights, because I seem to be running really fast. My muscles are more ballistic. I'm very light. I'm very zippy. Whereas sometimes when I'm doing weights, I'm a lot heavier and a bit more slower. I might feel like I'm very powerful, and I think psychologically I've missed the gym, but physically I would say I haven't really missed the gym. It's not hindered me in any way.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Right, the question. Yeah, go on, Des. I'll come after you.
No, I totally agree with what Gary's saying, and also in the summer, I put up a trampoline in the garden, and I've been using that for a lot of rebound work, high knees, sort of double jumps, all kind of plyometric type work. But with the rebound that you get from a trampoline, it's a lot more dynamic. So there's all kinds of things that we could do. The band. The resistant bands for me now, resistance bands circuits are bread and butter now for me. So I don't need a dumbbell, I don't need a barbell with 15, 20K on, because the bands do exactly the same work.
Exactly. It's interesting that, the pandemic has brought certain inconveniences, shall we say, or certain disruptions to normal routines, but I think some of the good disruptions that it has brought, in my opinion, is the disruption to mindsets.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that will be one huge positive that we're going to come out of it. Definitely from a track and field, from the sport where I'm involved. The disruption to the mindset, I think, has been a wonderful thing because it is allowing people to think things through. That things that we use as coaches used to put too much weight on, because really not for their efficacy, but basically usually in most cases for their fashion, for their fashionability, if I may use the term. Because they are in fashion, that's the thing.
Yes.
They're very trendy. They look classy. They look flashy. Those are the things that people would want to go for, and yet the efficacy of it is really maybe does not match the attention that is rendered on them. So disrupting such mindsets for me, I think, is a very, very positive thing that's coming out. And hearing you gentlemen talk about how the benefits that you're already seeing, in not following the usual mind processing on how to train, where to train, what to do, what constitutes training. That's absolutely to hear. It's just music to my ears to hear.
Well, I'll tell you what, Stan, on that note, when I used to compete back into 2004, the mindset that I had then had to kind of be undone when I returned to the sport, because it's so scientific now. That was a new obstacle for me to get over and get my head around. And my coach, who's in my corner now, is very old school, and he's looked at my training videos from last year and so forth and this and that, and he's just pinpointed certain weaknesses and areas, and he just said, listen, you've just got to do this and you've got to do that. And I said, but that's all what we used to do anyway. He says, we don't have to do anything different. No thanks, mate, I'm on a video call. And so I'm like, yeah, cool. So I trusted in him to go back to the old school method of training, and I'll tell you what, since I've been back in the sport, it's just been brilliant, mate. I love the training I'm doing. It's really benefiting me. It's quite simple. It's not too scientific. It's not too. Don't get me wrong. I know the science has its place, and if you understand it and the depth of it, but I think sometimes you can get lost in it. And for me, it's about simple, mate. If you're talking about center of mass has to be under your body, and you got to lean forward. Just lean forward. Just lean
and
forward.
run fast.
Yeah, run fast. You know what I mean? But I know coming back into the sport, it's been very scientific. It's been like, well, you've got to have your foot in this position, and you've got to lift your knee here, and you've got a heel recovery here, and you've got to do all of this stuff. And it's got but he's just said to me, run. And basically, I'm just running. And the more I run, the more I feel my rhythm. The more I run, the more I feel my running gait. I feel what suits me. The more I run, I feel my arms in a better position. And so the lack of running, basically, for me, or the lack of the volume of running, was my nemesis. And now that's been introduced, I'm not really focusing on the science of how to run. I'm just running, and because I'm doing the runs and the longer runs and all that stuff, the simple stuff from old school, I find it's really benefiting me. And that's just maybe me, how I'm built and where I come from, you know what I mean?
Well, the question that I'll before we go, that I'd like to ask is one, obviously, that many people listening here would want to ask. So what are you doing about taking care of the machine, taking care of the body itself, working on such a surface in such conditions? Surely there must be a greater degree of wear and tear. What are you doing, you gentlemen, what have you got in place to manage that? What strategies have you got in place to manage that? Des.
I'll take this one. Well, for me, and one thing that even before this period, the lockdown period, that I've been weak on, if you like, is rehab and recovery after sessions, and then also working with Gary, and especially during this period, I've learned more about managing the body after a session is as important or even more important than the session. So I invested in a massage gun and other implements to help the body recover and recuperate. Stretch more, have Epsom salt baths, and once you come away from a session, it's about having another session in the evening in your house. And I've still got work to do on that. My brother there is a lot more diligent, and I'm kind of I'm making sure he's encouraging me, and I'm accountable to him as well of what I'm doing. But yeah, it's for me personally, it has taken its toll. As I said, I am nursing a couple of little niggles that I need to fix before we get into the outdoor and summer. So I'm now focusing even more and treating these rehab sessions as sessions, or even in place of some of the sessions that we do. So I have a lot more recovery time and build that into my program a lot more, because less is more.
Yeah, and for me, Stan, very much the same. My wife will echo this. When I come in from training, I'll allow my body to settle down for probably a couple of hours. So I'll eat my food and shower and relax off. And then I don't really watch telly. So that's the time I need to stretch. That's the time I need to roll. And that's the time, like Des, I've got a massage gun myself. That's the time I need to get on the massage gun. So I've had to probably step that up a lot more. Not the fact that I've come away from the sessions on the concrete broken or hurting or anything like that. Just that, like you said, the impact. So I think what I've learned to do over these last few years coming back in the sport is not just train hard, but to recover, how to recover my body. And I've had to learn how to recover my body. So I know what works for me. I can come in from a session, a heavy session, if it's a volume or an endurance session, say early in the week. I know I can't just come in and do nothing. I have to come in. I sometimes even go into my shed and sit on my exercise bike and just do about 2 kilometers on my bike, just to flush out the legs, and then come in, then have my shower, eat my food. And so it's a bit of a chore, because there's lots of things to be done. But if we're going to use our bodies as a machine, I've got to take care of it. I can't take things for granted, because that's what's kept me through the 4 years, thankfully. You know what I mean? And so I do encourage my brother to do a lot more stretching, a lot more flexibility, a lot more rolling. Don't leave it a day and then roll out the next day. Try and do a little bit, even if you spend 10 minutes on each area, and it helps in the long run. So that's kind of, for me, I've had to step it up a little bit more, or be more mindful and be more aware of being on it. I've got to be on it.
Yeah. Right, gentlemen, we are getting to that place where we need to, give it a close. But I'll have one more clip here. But after the clip, I'd like to hear what, at least 2 tips, from both of you that you'd like to give other athletes out there who are in this, all athletes are in a similar situation. Not everyone has got access to a training facility. Not everyone has got access to their training equipment. There are lots of, intriguing and, hilarious stories about how athletes are trying to cope. What tips would you be able to give those that are still struggling and, maybe want to throw in the towel because they can't access neither facilities nor equipment? When we come back after this clip here, please, could I have 2 tips that you would like to share with someone in that situation?
A community has been built, and it would be great for it to open before they start any construction, because it will just uplift people, and this is what we need right now.
Over this last year, I've seen more people using it for physical activity, and it's not just about physical health, it's about your mental health as well. With the current climate, a lot of people are not feeling good, and there's no reason why it's sitting there dormant. It's been open for the last 3 or 4 years, and I just think it's a positive thing for many people on a bigger level.
Well, there are many facilities at the minute, out of necessity, that are lying dormant, with not being used, because it's a part of the strategies, to manage this pandemic. But what are your tips, that you can give people that, are listening or would listen to this? And, how do you cope?
I would personally encourage people to just take one day at a time. I would say, don't change the goal, but change the plan. Adapt the plan, but you still have the end goal. I still want to go World Championships. I still want to go Europeans, but I've had to adapt my plan, my training plan. But for me, what I do is I take one day at a time. I try not to look too far into the future, and I don't dwell in the past. I kind of try and live in the present. What can I do today? Let me put one foot in front of each other today, because I get days where I don't want to go out and train. I come in from a good hard day's work and think, I've got to go and do it again. And that luxury of going to a track isn't there. That luxury of going to a gym isn't there. But you know what? It comes down to your goal, and it comes down to your purpose, why you're doing what you're doing. And if your purpose is stronger, then every day I go out and do a training session, I know it's towards the goal. I may have had to change the plan, but every step I take is still towards the final goal. It's only a season.
Super duper there, Gary. So clear goals, keep the focus on the goal, and of course,
adapt the
papers. Let that, adapt the plan, and
one day at a time.
Feed the papers. Feed the papers. Des, your 2 tips.
Well, my brother Gary has kind of said a lot of what I was going to say, but also what I would recommend is press the reset button. So just however long you've been in the sport, or in what event that you do, or what you've achieved, this is a great opportunity just to strip away everything that's gone on in the past. We can't change that. Look at the here and now. Look at that as an opportunity to review the mental side. Check in again with yourself to see whether the goals that you made before all of this still ring true, and then look at it as a new adventure. Because for us, training a car park, it is we turn up and we're laughing. We're like 2 children with a new toy. So it's really just looking at it that way. Just say, look, we've all got to cope with this in some way. If I really want to achieve those goals, this is a great opportunity for me to try different things. If you look at what happened last summer for the athletes who were able to compete at European and world level, look at the hurdler, Warholm, if that's the way I pronounce it. Look how many personal bests that we saw, or seasons bests for the athletes that went out there. So it was something that they did during that time that they probably didn't do before, or didn't even realise, that made their performances even better. So it's looking at this as a new opportunity. And the last thing would be is to don't be in isolation. Reach out to people, and people can reach out to us, and we can talk to them. So don't be no man is an island. So just speak to people, and if you are not coping, just talk.
Yeah. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Des, thank you for your top tips there. Reset the button and reach out. Find that social connection even at a distance. We should. It's all very healthy as part of the coping strategies. And also look out for a car park near you. I think that's the tip that you guys left
out. Don't put the hurdles on a double yellow line.